Afternoon, guys. Hope you're all keeping well out there. Some interesting information to share today, and got to mix up two words simultaneously then. Some interesting information to share today about a couple of the partner chainsaws. Had some really interesting questions and chats with a few people, and saying goodbye to one of my really beautiful partner R16s. Spectacular saws, just the most gorgeous Swedish saws, some of the early partners. And I've brought out a few of my additional collection as well. I can't bring them all out just because there's just too many, but I brought a few out just to kind of place her in a timeline in history, and also a couple of interesting questions, and perhaps some information which is, well, is it either anecdotal or is it factual? And so I'm going to pose a few questions, and I'd love to hear what answers I get. That'd be really interesting as well. So today we've got an early selection of saws from the early 60s. So I have a couple of my R12s, the younger sister of the R11. The R11 was Sweden's first direct drive chainsaw, and 90 cc's, 50mm piston, 46mm stroke, approximately 5 horsepower. Interesting, that number, 5 horsepower. Lots of saws of that age, 90, 100, 110. They all list them at around 5 horsepower, but that's another subject. It was interesting. So 50-46, a couple of variations as well. The R12, they dropped the outboard oiler, which is present on the R11, and changed the handle design. Spectacular saw. Now I've got some of the early R16s, a couple of my R14s, R14T. Very interesting. So the R12s from 62-ish, so her sister the R11 from 58, yeah, 1962, and then a couple of years later we've got the R14s, and so the R14Ts are a 52mm piston with a 36mm stroke. So strangely, after a few years, they had the smaller displacement engines were running a bigger piston than their older sisters, 50mm. 52 on the 76, and this one. Okay, so 1966, 67, depending on the literature, I think it's 67. The R16, beautiful saws. These share the same stroke as the R14, 36mm, 44mm piston, make a nominal 3, just over 3.2 horsepower, depending on the literature, which is an interesting subject as well. The literature, how accurate is some of the literature we read? So this particular girl then is one of the early R16s. Non-AV, all the R16s non-AV. White slider switches for both the choke and the kill switch, and all mag alloy construction. Has one of the original wheel-nosed bars, just gorgeous running engines. So this girl is sold. Shout out Gareth. I know you haven't seen this saw yet, so I'm going to show her today. Obviously I've just shown her running, but I'll show her running. Perhaps we'll take a disc with her, because I know you've bought her without even watching a vid. So she's just been a show saw in gorgeous condition, and a slight variation on the R16s. So somebody messaged and said that a bit of the information was wrong on some of the R16s. No, it really isn't. And it's to do with the handles and the mounts. So they did another version of this saw, which slightly later, red and blue for the kill switch and the for the choke. But along with that, there was a couple of very unusual differences. Well, unusual insofar that you don't see many of them. This particular R16 has an integral knuckle guard cast into the mag alloy housing for the rear handle, and most of them are just the plain handle and they don't have that casting. And some of the later ones again, which this girl is, same coloured, but again doesn't have the knuckle guard. So there are a couple of really unusual variations on them and on the ignition system. And so from this one they went to the R17, which I have one. Do I have an R17 out? Oh yeah, the top. So exactly the same, but then with the addition of AV mounts. Then they went on to an R18 by 1970ish, circa 70, where they took a heat pipe from the exhaust and routed the airflow through the handles to give you heated grips. So, first trivia question then is, was there anybody before Partner using exhaust gases on a chainsaw to heat their handle? Let me know, guys, if you know. And actually, if any of you've got an R18 which is complete and up and running, I only have, I probably have 75% of a complete R18. I have never had a complete R18 saw, and it's hard to get the documentation to see exactly what I'm missing. If any of you've got one out there, I'd love to see a video or some pictures. Send me a link through YouTube. I'd just love to see it. It would help me in the assembly of mine and to find out exactly what I'm missing. So, first trivia then. Anybody before Partner on their R18 heating chainsaw handles with exhaust gas? And all the saws then, when they have their designated number, like the R11, R14, R14T, R14S, the 14 in that instance, all those engine capacities are all the same size. Have any of you ever seen an R15 or a P15? Now it's interesting because there's a bit of misinformation about those two saws. So if any of you got an R15 or a P15, let me know. Are they the same or are they a different capacity? And if they're different, is that the first time that Partner have ever listed a designated model number and they've got a different CC? Anyway, second trivia question. And third trivia question then is Partner R30, R30B, R30T, the R35, the P85. What capacity engine is that in CCs? And if all of you are thinking it's 85, that would be the consensus on all the documentation. In which case then, what size piston and stroke are you running? Because loads of documentation for those engines shows those as a 5236, which of course is a 76cc like the R14s. So there is so much information which is either it's anecdotal because it's just not factual, but we read it and it gets passed on and passed on. I was speaking to somebody the other day and he said, I've got my R35 and it's a beautiful saw. I said, okay. And he said 5236. I said, it's not 5236, is it? So any of you know exactly what the displacement and the bore and stroke of an R35, R30, P85 without looking it up? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Right, let me show, that's not the saw, Gareth, let me show you this saw running. Gorgeous engines, 44mm piston, 36mm stroke, spectacular running. So, we've got a little bit of larch up the top. I'll take a couple of discs off you. Hope you love the saw. I'm a huge Partner chainsaw fan, and I love the history of the company, and I may have touched on it on another video, in fact, about their relationship with another company called Crescent and another company called Bebo. Real history which dates back into the 40s. Okay, is this girl? Yeah, here we go. Gareth, many thanks for buying the partner R16. So that's the first time she's cut in, must be a year. Just a beautiful running saw. Hope you love the saw. I'll give her a quick clean and wipe over before she gets boxed up for you, but just not just a gorgeous thing to have in the workshop. So you think from 67 coming up 57 years old circa, just amazing. But you love the saw. Okay guys, they're the questions for today then. Heated handles from exhaust gases. Who was the first company to do it? R30, 35, P85, what bore and stroke are you running? What was the other question I was asking? Can't remember. Guys, stay safe. Bye for now.